Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of everyone's favorite golf preview show, the internet sensation that is slowly sweeping the land, the WAGGLE, brought to you by rotocurve.com. I am your host, Jeff Ulrich. You can follow me on Twitter at the Fantasy Grind. I go by Wave Goodbye on most major sites, and I'm happy to be back. And I'm mostly happy the last week is over. Um, last week was seemed to be about nothing but, or I should say, it seemed to be about everything except golf. It was about the weather and the course changing, and a lot of players that no one had ever heard of. So, last week was eventful for all the wrong reasons. You always hate to kind of be at mercy of the weather. A lot of weird things happened last week. Obviously, they had to change one of the holes in the event from a par 4 to a par 3, which was kind of interesting, but also kind of annoying. Saw a lot of top players just sort of underperform last week. I think there's a good reason why. The course wasn't in great shape just because of the weather. And a lot of weird things happened last week. But you know what's great about last week is that it's over. So we don't need to worry too much about it. It was pretty strange, though. I'm going to be giving you, obviously, a preview of the DK roster this week and what to look for. But first, let's talk a little bit about the event. Let's talk a little bit about some things that did happen last week that you might just want to keep an eye on. Charlie Hoffman played really well again. He's been super consistent lately, but he's actually out of the Memorial this week. So make sure you note that. Don't put him in any lineups because he's still on the DK roster. Brooks Koepka returned and actually played pretty solidly. 16th place, so that was pretty interesting. Jason Duffner, another name to keep an eye on. I believe he finished T10. His first big finish in a while. He hasn't played great all year, but he seems to be rounding into form. Tony Finau, another name to keep an eye on. Landed at T10 last week, and he's actually put together 3 really solid events now. 19th at Colonial, and I believe 16th the week before that. So three really good finishes for Tony Finau, or Fineo. I can't remember how to pronounce his name, but you guys know who I'm talking about. And Brad Snedeker continued his hot streak, rebounded after a really bad start. I thought he was going to miss the cut. Ended up T6. Actually, pretty solid week. Someone to keep an eye on down the road. He's not playing this week, but Brad Snedeker, once he gets hot, someone you want to keep rolling with. So, like I said, though, I'm glad last week's over. So let's talk about this week. They're moving out of Texas. They're into Dublin, Ohio. They're into the Memorial. This is Jack Nicklaus's sort of baby tournament. He created it. He helped create the golf course that it's played at, Muirfield Village. So it's really sort of a prestigious event just because Jack Nicklaus is, associated with it. It's always got some Hall of Fame inductees going on there every year. And it's a really good course, too. So the other thing that's really important for fantasy this week is that this field is only 120 players. So that's reduced from 144, 155, which is a usual regular tour event. And 70 players are still going to make the cut. So that means that over 50% of the field is going to make the cut this week for fantasy. And that's important because that means you can take a few more shots this week. Some of those lower price players who maybe don't look so good in a regular week, they're going to have a better chance of playing the weekend, and they're going to give you some salary savings that you can sort of take advantage of. So that's something to really keep in mind. You can be a little bit more aggressive with some of your tournament lineups this week, and that's definitely a strategy I'd recommend. So keep in mind, only 120 players, still 70 in ties make the cut though. So we're in Muirfield Village. Muirfield Village is a par 72. Plays about 73 to 7,400 yards, so it's not super long, but at the same time, it's not short either. Length isn't really what defines this course, though. This course was sort of built to be a mirror image of Augusta National, and you can see that in a lot of the design. There's a lot of sloping, a lot of undulations, big greens. The bunker complexes are tough, and there's actually the par 3 12th hole at Muirfield Village is like a mirror image of Augusta National. So that kind of gives you an idea of just how much these two courses sort of mirror each other. There's also 4 reachable par 5s on this course, which is, again, a hallmark sort of that Augusta has. The par 5 scoring there is really important. And par 5 scoring here, again, is really important this week. Those 4 par 5s are going to be the best scoring chances the players have. So something to keep in mind and keep your mind on when you're looking at players is par 5 scoring. This really is like a what you'd call a championship caliber course. And what I mean by that is that it's sort of an all-around test. I call these these types of courses all around are championship courses, because it's not just bombers that play well here. It's not just guys who hit it straight. It's players who have good short games, have solid tee to green games too, though. So it's generally just not one style that's dominated here. And you can really sort of see that in the list of past winners. The winners here have all been really, really solid PGA sort of tour veterans, or players with majors. Tiger Woods has won here 5 times. Steve Stricker's won here. Matt Kuchar's won here. KJ Choi's won here. He's won a Players Championship as well. He's a really solid PGA player. Trying to think of a few others. Can't think of any right now, but even Hideki Matsuyama last year, this guy's got a solid tee to green game and a nice short game. He's going to be a future star. So him winning last year really wasn't that big of a shock. So looking for sort of solid all-around players this week is going to be key, and experience is key here too. Knowing how to play these greens. So something to keep in mind. Something to keep your mind on, I should say. So last year, Hideki did win. He wanted a playoff over Kevin Na. Na actually shot a 64 to end his tournament last year, and it looked like he was going to win for a while, but then Hideki managed to tie him, won it in a playoff. For stats this week, I am looking at a few different things. I'm definitely taking a look at a scoring average, and here's a little interesting fact. The winners, the past 5 years, the winners here have all ranked in the top 20 in scoring average. And actually, if you go back to 2004, I believe there's only one player who's won this event who's actually been outside the top 20 in scoring average. So scoring average is a good way to sort of, cut down the number of players you look at this week. I'm really looking for players who have been solid, consistently playing all year. So scoring average, if they rank highly in that area, that's generally a good sign that they've been consistent and playing well. And I think it's a good place to start this week. And then I'm also looking at par 5 scoring, which I mentioned was super important. And scrambling is also very important this week. So those are 3 stats I'm definitely keying on. And strokes gained tee to green, another stat that's shown itself to be very important here. Obviously, you need a solid tee to green game. Matsuyama proved last year that really, if you're a tee to green superstar like he is, you can do really well at this course. So those are sort of the 4 stats that I've really keyed on, and I think it's really important to sort of look at a couple different areas this week, because this is such sort of an all-around test of golf. So definitely looking for experience over youth as well. It's not to say I'm avoiding young players, but just giving a little bit more extra weight to people who have played this course before and who are playing well coming in. I think those are 2 key things. Experience definitely is a factor this week. So before we get into it, let's just talk a little bit about the tournaments that are available on DraftKings this week too, and in fantasy golf, daily fantasy golf. So DraftKings rolled out a $250K guarantee $3 buy-in tournament with a max entry of 200 entries per person. So this is an interesting tournament, and it's made more interesting by the fact that first place is 100K. So obviously it's got a very top-heavy payout structure. I believe it's like 40% of the prize pool goes to first, or around there. So that's a lot. That's more than what it generally should be for a normal tournament. It's not a very flat payout structure. Obviously, it's very top-heavy, and it's not the type of tournament you expect to have a high ROI, return on investment, on, unless, of course, you get one of those top positions. This is really a tournament I'm just looking at as a big lottery ticket. I'm going to have a bunch of entries in, but not going to expect much back unless I actually hit and get that optimal lineup and get the first place. So it's good test. It's a good practice for the Millionaire Maker coming up, but I'm not a huge fan of these tournaments, but I really like the fact that they've put one out there, because they're okay to play once in a while. I mean, they are what they are, and they do attract a lot of new players, and I think that's really good for daily fantasy. So DraftKings is also, they have their sort of summer games promotion, and it looks like they're actually going to have a $100 buy-in with a lot flatter payout structure next week. So I'm looking forward to that. And I like the fact that they're doing a lot of variety. So check out DraftKings this week, $3 buy-in. You could win 100K. It's pretty much that simple. Really cool tournament. Just wanted to mention that before we get going here. So yeah, let's bring up the salary zone. Let's get going here. Let's go over these salaries on DraftKings. Let's see who is a good play this week. So starting off, this field is, I don't want to say it's watered down, because it is still a strong field, but there are a lot of players who skip this event. Rory McIlroy's not here. Adam Scott's not here. Henrik Stenson's not here. Snedeker's not here. Webb Simpson's not here. So there's a few players missing. I think that makes me like Jordan Spieth a little bit more this week. Spieth, he was a little off last week and he probably burned a few people. But I really like the setup of this course a lot more for him. Obviously, the course mimics Augusta National, and Spieth just destroyed everyone there a couple months ago. So, I really think this is a course he should play well at, and I won't be shocked at all if he wins this event. At 12.5, his price has come down a bit, and you can actually make more solid lineups with him this week. So I'm actually going to have a lot of exposure to Spieth. I usually like to fade the top options, but I feel like Spieth is going to be a little bit under-owned this week because he played poorly last week, and also because people are going to be keying on a few other players that I'm going to talk about in a sec. But for GPP purposes, I'm definitely going to have quite a bit of exposure to Spieth. I won't be shocked if he wins. And even if he doesn't win this week, you can still build pretty solid lineups with him. So I like that. I like using Spieth up here at the top this week. And moving down, not a huge fan of Dustin Johnson. He's been pretty solid here at this course, but I just don't feel like his price is kind of warranted this week. I feel like there's better options for what he brings to the table. Could he win here? For sure he could, but he's still playing solidly tee to green. I just think that the short game that's needed this week, it's probably not really plays to his strengths as much as it does other courses. So I think at 12,000, if he was maybe 1,000 cheaper, I would consider him more, but I'm probably going to mostly fade Dustin Johnson. So Justin Rose is interesting. He's got a really good record here. Won here before, several top tens. So at 11.6, he'll probably be fairly under-owned, and that's probably going to be a mistake because he's got a solid record here, and he played really well at Augusta a few weeks ago. So I could definitely see Justin Rose going well here this week. Definitely just a solid option. Right beneath Justin Rose, though, is who I think will probably be the highest owned player of the week, Hideki Matsuyama. Obviously, just a super solid tee to green player, and statistically wise, he fits this course pretty much better than anyone else. So, highly ranked in scoring average and par 5 scoring and strokes gained tee to green, and actually really highly ranked in scrambling too. I believe he's like 11th in scrambling. So he's improved his short game this year. You can see just looking at his past few events here I brought up on screen. I believe he's missed like one cut the entire year. Has 2 top 5s in his past 6 tournaments. He's playing really solidly, and he fits this course really well. So, and he's not one of the most expensive players. So you have a lot going for Hideki Matsuyama this week, and I expect him to be highly owned. And I don't discredit using him. I actually wrote him up in most of my articles this week, why he was such a good fit. But at the same time, you do have to think, if he's going to be that highly owned, there are some other options that you can swerve off to. And I already talked about Spieth, and I already talked about Rose. So I think if you want to use Matsuyama for cash games, that's perfectly fine. He's a little bit expensive, but you can still build lineups around him. And like I said, he's just playing so solidly. So he's definitely a good option for that. But I think he's going to be 40% owned or so in tournaments. I really think he's going to be, maybe not 40, but definitely going to crack 30, I think. So I'm going to look for a few other options. I'm definitely going to have exposure to Matsuyama. I think it's a little bit, I don't think it's a good strategy to just completely fade him. But I'm definitely going to look to have some exposure to other players in his price range so that I can, take advantage of lower ownership percentages in GPPs. So, you have Rickie Fowler underneath him. I think Rickie will be semi well owned because he's still coming off the player success. And I don't hate this course for Rickie. I just think that he's a little bit too inconsistent for this price tag. And he's coming from Ireland. He played in Ireland last week in a really tough event. And, it's hard to travel across seas. And the US Open's in a couple weeks. It's not so much that I don't like the fit of this course for Rickie Fowler. I just don't like the circumstances. I think he's going to be keying on the US Open. I don't really see him super focused this week. So I'm going to be off Rickie Fowler. The player I'm actually kind of hyping this week is Phil Mickelson. So bring up Phil's face here. T4 at Wells Fargo. I know he missed the cut at the Players, but he's never really played well there outside of his one win. And then T2 at the Masters. So, he's coming off 2 top 5 performances. And something that's really interesting about Phil, he's never won this event, but every time he's played well at Augusta, he seems to play well at this event. So the years he won in 2006 and 2010, he played here, and he finished top 5 at the Memorial both those years. So I really like Phil Mickelson this week in GPPs, and I like using him as a sort of swerve play off Matsuyama because I really think Phil could outscore Matsuyama this week. I think Phil could land another top 5, maybe even win this event. He hasn't won on tour in a while, and I know his motivation right now is for the U.S. Open, but I really think he's going to be focused this week. I think he's going to have a good week. So I like Phil Mickelson. He can dominate the par 5s just as well as anyone, and he's been playing solidly. So I'm definitely going to have Mickelson on my radar this week. I probably don't like him in cash games just because he could still open with like a 76 and kind of, decide that he's just going to take the week off. But I think there's a lot of potential there. I think he's going to come in focused, and I really like him. I really like his game. I like the fact he played well at Augusta this year. So that's sort of my thoughts on the top players. Obviously, I like Spieth. I think he's going to bounce back and be strong. I like Justin Rose as a solid play. Maybe not my top play, but a solid play. Matsuyama, there's not much else to say. He's just a super, super great player, a solid fit for this course. One drawback, going to be highly owned. And then you have Mickelson, who I really think is sort of an under radar GPP play for the week. So moving down here, Matt Kuchar, I believe he's like never finished worse than 15th at this course. The one thing that worries me about Kuchar is that he's really expensive, and he's actually not really playing that great this year, by Matt Kuchar. Still making cuts, but, he did miss the cut at the Players. Only 40th last week at the Byron Nelson. Now, I know it was rainy and stuff, but he's still just not really playing up to Matt Kuchar standards. Didn't play well at the Masters either. So I'm personally fading Matt Kuchar this week. I don't really have as much confidence in him as I usually do. And I don't like the fact that he didn't play well at Augusta. So, I think there's just something missing from his game right now. And his price is just too expensive. So I'm fine fading Matt Kuchar this week. Jim Furyk, really good record here as well. I might have some exposure to Jim Furyk just as like a GPP play because I think he'll be super low owned. But another player after his win, he sort of went off his form a little bit, and again, just super high price. So you have to consider that. If he was 1,000 or 2,000 less, I definitely have some exposure to him. But I think at 10.9, he's a pure GPP play for me, and I won't have too much exposure to him as well. Jason Day is interesting at this price. He doesn't have a great record at this event. Actually, I don't think he's ever finished top 25 at this event. He's played here 6 times. He's a local resident, and he does know the course well, which is really strange. And he has played well at Augusta. So his record here is really strange. He had to drop out of last week's event with some dizziness. And he has had sinus problems in the past, which has sort of affected his dizziness. So that's something to keep in mind. I really hope there's nothing wrong with him. I hope he was just being, taking a precaution last week. But it's got to sort of come into your decision making. I really like the price tag on him. I think he's actually priced too cheap, but I'm just not sure what he's going to bring. He doesn't have a super great history of this course. Statistically, he's a monster. He's a great scrambler. He's a solid putter. Obviously has a great tee to green game. And he dominates par 5s. It's just that, if he's a little off, he can be pretty bad too. He's almost like Phil Mickelson in that way. And you have to think he's kind of got the U.S. Open in mind. So he might just be using this as like a prep week. The price is tempting. I'm not going to have too much exposure to him though. I just think that there's better spots, better players in better form right now. So it's tempting. I won't dissuade anyone from using him in GPPs for a few lineups, but I think you still have to take a little bit of precaution with Jason Day this week. Chris Kirk is really expensive, but he does have a good record at this event. 4th here last year, really good short game player. Has made the cut at Augusta the first 2 times he's played it, so he's played pretty solidly there. There's a little bit of recency bias with Chris Kirk, I think, because he just won, and people say, well, he's priced expensive now, and he can't win twice in a row, can he? Well, he probably could. This is a pretty good setup for him. He's expensive, but he's a really consistent player. So I think because he's expensive, you can probably fade him in cash games. But he's an interesting tournament play because I really do think he could win this event. He's he's just got the right sort of mindset. He does win a lot, and he could end up as one of the top performers. So at 10-3, he's expensive, but it's not like you can't build lineups around him. So I don't mind Chris Kirk this week for a little bit of exposure. Tiger Woods, pure GPP play, obviously. He's absolutely dominated this event when he's been in good form. And, he could come in here and have a good week. I think winning might be a little bit too much to expect, but could he top 10 or maybe even top 5? Yeah, he could. I mean, you saw what he did at Augusta National, even when he wasn't playing well. And he likes this course, as much as he likes Augusta. So, Tiger Woods is in play for me this week. I'm not sure how much I'm going to use him, but I'm definitely going to have him in some GPP lineups. And I think he could put up a score here, a fantasy score. And I think he could kind of, put up a good showing. I'm not sure if he can win, but we're not, playing to win necessarily. We just want good fantasy totals. And I think Woods could give you that this week. So, and I don't think he'll be super high owned, but I could be wrong about that. So Woods in play for me for GPPs though. Yeah, that's about all I'll say. Bill Haas, I think he's a super solid play this week. Ranks nicely, ranks above average in all the statistical categories I looked at. Par fives, tee to green, scoring average, and actually really decent scrambling statistics too. I believe he's top 25. Last 2 times he's played this event, 4th and 8th, and he's played well at Augusta National too. He's made the cut there, I believe, the last 3 times. I believe he's been top 30 each of his last 3 trips to Augusta. So I think Bill Haas is a super consistent player regardless of where he plays. But I think this week he just offers great, great cash game potential because he's a player who's consistent. He's going to have a really good shot at making the cut, and he's probably also going to, end up at least in the top 30 or top 20, which is good for fantasy points for cash games. So, Bill Haas, I'm going to be trying to build some cash game lineups around him for sure. Kevin Na also sort of a consideration. Guy's just been so solid recently. I won't bother bringing up his card, but he's got like multiple top 10s and multiple top 20s in his last 7 tour appearances. Second here last year, and I believe he was 10th or 12th at Augusta this year. So, he's playing really well. He's got a super great short game. Tee to green, he's really solid. He ranks highly in strokes gained tee to green. He's not the par 5 monster that some of these other guys are, but he ranks really high in par 4 scoring. So he kind of makes up for it. I'm not sure how highly owned he'll be. I think a lot of people might just sort of forget about him this week. And I do like him. I do like using Kevin Na this week. And, I'll probably even consider him for cash games. I might not use him just because he's a little bit too expensive for me for cash. But for GPP purposes, I'll have some Kevin Na exposure for sure. This guy's due to win soon. And this is a course, where he proved last year that he can play well. So don't forget about Kevin Na. And actually, while we're talking here, this whole price range from 87 to 92 is all these 4 players here: Kevin Na, Billy Horschel, Patrick Reed, Bill Haas. Those are 4 players that you're really gonna have to make a decision about for a lot of your lineups. So, because I think all 4 of them offer good potential. I'll just talk about Patrick Reed. He really fits this course well statistically. Like he fits it almost as well as Hideki Matsuyama does. 14th in par 5 scoring. Great scrambler and a great putter as well. So this will be his first time playing here. I think that might scare a few people off, but I'm going to have a lot of Patrick Reed this week. I really like the way this course sets up for him. He plays a nice draw too. It's the same way a former champion, Kenny Perry here. Perry's won this event before and also played well at Augusta. So, Reed will have that going for him. And this course apparently sets up well for a draw, just like Augusta. So for right-handers, so I really like Patrick Reed this week. I think given that a lot of the other top players are sort of missing, there's no Rory, there's no Stenson. I think this could be a week where you see Reed sort of pop up again. He's been consistent. He hasn't had a top finish for a while, but he's been making cuts. He missed 1 cut at the RBC, but he's still making cuts. He's still just playing consistent golf. I think that's the main thing to keep in mind. So I really like Patrick Reed this week. I'm going to have a lot of exposure to him. Billy Horschel's been playing solidly. 15th here last year. Doesn't quite have the short game I'd like to see. So he's probably like the 4th option among these guys for me. But at the same time, he's still a solid play. So again, you have to consider all 4 of these players. And Horschel might be the lowest owned. I think Horschel will be the lowest owned. And I think Haas and Reed will probably be the highest. So For GPP purposes, probably lean non-Horschel. Cash games definitely have my eye on Reed and Haas. So moving down here, Charlie Hoffman's out, just to keep in mind. Brendon Todd, 8th here last year. Hasn't had a great last couple tournaments, but really solid short game. Been playing pretty well tee to green all year, so I think he makes for a great GPP play, actually, this week, Brendon Todd. I'll definitely have him in a lot of my GPP lineups. Not a lot, but a good chunk of them. He's just a solid player, and I think he fits his course well. You know, when you see that Matt Kuchar won at this event and Steve Stricker won, you know, you have to think Brendon Todd is in play at this event too. So I think a lot of people are going to forget about him because he burned so many people last week by missing the cut. So I like Brendon Todd this week. I think this course sets up well for him. So moving down a little bit, Kevin Kisner is back. This guy's just been ranked great in all the statistical categories of the last few weeks he's played. Obviously, numerous runner-ups in his past few tournaments, and he did make the cut here last year. I don't love the course for him. I'd rather see him like on a par 70, but you know, he's playing solidly, and at 8,200, Kisner's definitely in play for me this week. I'll definitely have some exposure to him. I don't know if I love him for a cash game play, but he definitely is someone I'd consider. He's just playing so well, so definitely I'd recommend getting some exposure to Kisner this week if possible. Ryan Moore has a really good record here. He's been playing super great. I don't want to say I'm going to fade Ryan Moore, but you know, he does make a lot of cuts, and he's got a good record at this event. At the same time, you look after the Masters, and he's got a missed cut at the Players and a T47 at the Wells Fargo. It's not super inspiring. So, you know, I expect he'll turn it around here pretty soon, but you know, this is a tough course, and I'm just not sure if there aren't better options this week than Ryan Moore, especially because there are some good players priced cheaper than him. So for cash games, I think he's in play. He's not super expensive, and he makes a lot of cuts. So, you know, from that perspective, he's probably a decent cash game play. But, you know, for GPPs, I might lean somewhere else. So that's kind of my feeling on Ryan Moore this week. Wanted to mention him because he does have a good course history. Ben Martin been playing well. I'm probably going to skip him this week. Don't love the course setup for him, but he's someone you could consider too. He's been playing super well. So at 8,000, Brooks Koepka is just super good value this week. He returned last week, T16. He's over his injury that he had right before the Masters. Obviously didn't have a good Players, but again, the course does not set up well for Brooks Koepka. He's more of a power game player, and he's really going to be able to dominate these par fives this week. 7th in par 5 scoring, ranks highly in strokes gained tee to green. A little bit worried about Brooks's short game, but you know, he played really well last week, 16th. I just think the course sets up well for him. I think Koepka has just as much tee to green game as Matsuyama does, and I think he's like a future winner of this event. So at 8,000, I think he's just a huge bargain. The site DraftKings still hasn't bumped up his salary yet, so that's good. It is his first time playing the event, but I'm not too worried about it. I think this is a great week to use Brooks Koepka. Can have a lot of them. He's going to be in all my cash game lineups, I think. Just super undervalued. So yeah, definitely. That's about all I'll say about Brooks Koepka because it's pretty straightforward. Talked about Duffner at the start there. Been playing better. Don't love him for this course, but someone I'm going to keep an eye on. One guy I am considering, and I'm going to use in a lot of GPPs, is Harris English. You know, obviously his record here, I'll just bring it up briefly, not great. Hasn't been playing great lately, but he's still ranked 11th in scoring average on the year. Hits it long, really good scrambler as well, top 25 in scrambling on the year still. So statistically, he fits this course. And, you know, eventually this guy's going to turn his game around. And when he does, you can kind of want to be on him. And at this cheap price, I'm definitely going to have some exposure to him for GPP purposes because he could definitely pop up here with like a top 5. He's got the game to do it. It's just a matter of, you know, what week is he going to turn it around in? So I like this sort of setup for him. Yeah, I really think at that cheap price too, he's going to be under-owned, and he's got a lot of potential. So actually, and another player, similarly, Marc Leishman missed the cut last week and burned, well, he burned me because I was on him, Marc Leishman, a lot last week. Burned a lot of people, but you know, he's played well at Augusta too, and he's actually made, I believe, like his last 3 or 4 cuts at this event. So, I think at 7,700, Marc Leishman's another player you could consider for GPP purposes. He won't be high owned. Neither of these guys will be high owned. And they both have potential, like for top 10s or top 5s. So, because when they're on, they have great tee to green games, I should say. Sorry. So, 2 guys I'm considering for GPP purposes, Leishman in English. And actually moving down, Robert Streb, great tee to green game player. Been playing a lot better in his last 2 or 3 tournaments, like top 20 at Colonial. So, and he made the cut here last year. So again, you could kind of lump him in. I think Streb might actually be higher owned than Leishman or English, but I think all 3 of those guys, really interesting plays. So Pat Perez, someone I'll mention, really good record here and just been playing super solidly recently. At 7,500, I'll definitely consider him, as a cash game play. I actually think he makes a really good cash game play. He's been firing off like top 20, top 25s. I believe he was like top 15 at his last tournament. So just, playing really well and has a good record this event. So, price still cheap, 7,500. His price actually came down this week. So at 7,500, he's a good play. He's definitely a play for me this week. I'll have some shares of him. I'm going to be fading most of these guys here, but I do have my eye on 2 people at 7,400 here. So Kevin Chappell is someone I'm definitely interested in this week. He finished second at this event in 2003. You can see he sort of had a really slow start to the year. Bring up his card here. Really slow start to the year. But tee to green game, when he's on, he's one of the best in the world here. So doesn't have the greatest short game, but like I said before, he's finished second at this event. And you can see that he's really put it together the last couple of weeks. 2 top 20s in his past 2 events. That's really encouraging for Kevin Chappell. And at 7,400, I don't think he's going to be highly owned because there's a lot of other young players down here that I think people are going to be gravitate to more, like Justin Thomas and Daniel Berger. At 7,400, though, I really like Kevin Chappell this week. I like his course history here, and I like the fact he's been improving. So this is a week for me that I think you can really use him. I think he's a fantastic tournament play. And then you also have Russell Henley, who I really liked last week, and I like still this week. He's playing really solidly tee to green, really good putter when he's on, and he's finished 6th at this event before too. So just another good young player who, if he puts it together, like if he puts a short game together this week, he could challenge for the win. And he's got the game to do it. He was 21st at Augusta this year. Henley was so. By all intents and purposes, he should do well here this week. And at 7,400, that's really cheap for Russell Henley. And I like Kevin Chappell's price too. So those are 2 players I'm keying on at that price range. Moving down a little bit more, John Sendon's a little bit interesting. You could take a look at him. Jason Bone's been playing well too. Doesn't have a great history of this course, but I like his past few tournaments. And Francisco Molinari has been playing well over in Europe too. He just about won the big event, the Wentworth event a few weeks ago. So he's a super solid tee to green player, Molinari. I'm going to use him in a few GPPs for sure this week. He hasn't played here before, but that doesn't really scare me too much. Actually, I'm not sure if he's played here before. Don't quote me on that. I'll have to check that after. So Molinari definitely someone in play for me though this week. He's been playing really well lately, so keep that in mind. Cameron Tringali, interesting cash game play. I believe he's 3 for 3 at this event and cuts made, and he's just a consistent cut maker anyways. And he's been playing well. He was second at Zurich about a month ago. So Tringali, again, 14 out of 18 cuts on the year, only 7,300. Like him for cash games. Going down, I don't necessarily trust Choi or Sabatini much, just because they're getting on in age a little bit. They don't quite, Choi's obviously got a great record this event, so he's someone you could consider. Hearn, decent record at this event. Then you have Justin Thomas, who's really cheap this week. I'm probably going to fade Justin Thomas. I think he'll be too highly owned, and he didn't play great. He didn't play very well last week. He could come in here and pop up again. And it wouldn't shock me, but at 7,200, I think he's going to be really highly owned. And I think there's some more interesting plays this week. Like I just mentioned, Henley and Chappell. You could even get a little bit of exposure to Tringali. And I don't know. I'll definitely use a little bit of him in some lineups, but I'm not going to have a huge amount of Justin Thomas this week. I think it's kind of maybe a good time to fade him. We'll see. He definitely has a solid tee to green game. Not so great around the greens though, so he might struggle with the greens here too. He did play here last year, 37th, so he's obviously got experience. I don't know. I just a little concerned about his performance last week, so we'll see. We'll see what happens with him. He's going to be a popular play because he's really cheap this week. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. If you're on him, I can't say no because he is cheap and he always produces points, it seems like. But this is a tough course, and there's an emphasis on short games, so something to keep in mind. I really like Steve Stricker this week, 7,100. Past champion. He just makes a ton of cuts. For cash games at 7,100, you just need to put Steve Stricker in your lineups, and that's it. If you're making a cash game lineup this week and you don't have Steve Stricker in it, you've made a mistake. That's my opinion. He makes too many cuts. Past winner of this event, and he's only 7,100. And his game's been getting into better form recently. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. Cash game, you have to use Steve Stricker in your cash games. Moving down here, isn't too many other people that excite me. Dillette has actually played well here. I still don't really trust him. So that's about all I'll say about Dillette. Daniel Berger, I might have some exposure to Berger. He played well last week. He played pretty solidly. So, I'll probably have exposure to him. He's only 7,000. Good long game. Should do well in the par fives. It's his first visit, so you have to be a little bit concerned. I'm not going to go overboard with Daniel Berger, but I'll definitely have him in some tournament lineups, and I expect he'll be high owned, just like Justin Thomas. I expect Berger and Thomas to be high owned. So I personally like Henley and Chappell a little bit more, and I obviously like Steve Stricker a lot. But there is merit in Daniel Berger. He's got a good all around game. He ranks actually top 50 in scrambling too. So definitely like Daniel Berger too. I just don't like the fact he'll be high owned. So now we're under 7,000 here in price, and it gets a little bit dicey here pretty quickly. Russell Knox is a consistent player at 6,900. Missed the cut here last year, but he's been playing solidly tee to green all year. So, if you need sort of a consistent player at this price, I think he gives you that. I don't think you should expect too much though, except maybe made cut. Matt Jones, pretty solid tee to green player. Been playing pretty well this year. A little bit inconsistent, but I think potential wise, Jones probably has a bit more potential than Russell Knox. Do not like Martin Laird this week. Don't like Charles Howell III this week. Moving down here, Sean Stefani, really solid player so far this year. I think at 6,800, you can take some shots with Sean Stefani. I don't think he's played this event yet, but he's just playing so solidly that it doesn't concern me too much. At 6,800, he's just too cheap, and I think you can use him this week. So definitely a player to consider at that price. I don't think I'd use Stefani in cash games, though. I'll just say that. I think I'd just reserve him for GPPs. Moving down here, Ernie Els actually has a really good record of this event. I believe he's won it in the past. He's obviously played so many years, but solid player still. So someone to consider at 6,700. He's still capable of putting up like a top 20, top 10. So I'll probably have a little bit of exposure to him this week, to be honest. Still a good player. So 6,700 Ernie Els. I like Tony Finau or Finau. 6,700. He dominates the par fives. Dominates par 5 scoring, 19th in par 5 scoring. And like I mentioned at the start of the show, his last 3 events, 10th, 19th, 16th. So he's got it going. He's got that long game going. It's his first time playing the event, and I'm definitely not recommending him for cash game purposes. But for a certain percentage of my GPP lineups, I'm gonna have Tony Finau in them because he can rack up the fantasy points. He can get you those eagles that you need on those short par 5s. And he's playing solidly. So why not take a chance? My theme this week is if I'm going under 7,000, I want guys who have the highest, fantasy potential. I don't care necessarily about, making cuts or floors so much. I want players with high ceilings. And I think Finau has a high ceiling. I think Stefani probably has a decent ceiling this week. So I like him. I think Danny Lee is actually interesting from that perspective too. He's a really good, solid young player who's been playing well. Good sand player, pretty good around the greens. So he's got a decent ceiling. I could see him like landing a top 10, a surprise top 10. And moving down here, you could even maybe put Jason Kokrak in that category, although he's been playing really inconsistent. So I'd probably just skip him for one more week. But he's someone who could pop up. He dominates the par fives too. So, and then you have sort of a selection of veteran players once you get under here. So Bo Van Pelt's played this course like 10 years in a row. I believe he's made the cut all 10 times. So for cash game purposes, you could consider Bo Van Pelt, or even just to round out a GPP lineup, I guess. I'm not sure what his potential is, but he does make a lot of cuts at this event. That you can't doubt that. So definitely someone to use to round a lineup up. I'm not going to trust him too much this week. I'd probably rather go like with William McGirt, who's been playing pretty solidly all year. Made the cut. Actually, I think he's 1 for 2 in cuts made here, but he's been playing pretty solidly. Pretty solid tee to green player. Actually has pretty decent statistics on the year. Top 50 in scramblings. So McGirt's kind of a guy at 6,300. I'd consider as sort of a cheap punt play. And Scott Stallings he misses a ton of cuts, but he's actually made the cut at this event the last 4 times, and he's got a 4th place finish at this event. And he's actually been on record that he really likes this event. So again, if you're looking for GPP players with high ceilings, Scott Stallings is actually a really interesting play this week. He can score well on the par fives, makes a lot of birdies. He does make a lot of bogeys. He actually had a 22nd not too many events ago, so that's good. He misses a ton of cuts, but when he plays well, Scott Stallings can get you a top finish. He's got a 4th place here. So, for GPP purposes only, Scott Stallings at 6,300 is a really good play this week. And that sounds strange to say, but it's true. I would not use him in a cash game. If you're looking to get 6 players through and just make sure they all make the cut, he's not your player. Like I said, I'd go McGirt, or I'd go Van Pelt, or I'd even go Kenny Perry before I went Stallings. But if you want a high upside GPP lineup, yeah, I would go Scott Stallings all day, because he's much better at scoring on the par fives than those players, and he's got a really good record this event. So someone I think you need to keep in mind. I'll just mention Kenny Perry briefly. Really good record of this event, past winner, 16th last year. Again, if you want a player who's probably gonna have a good shot at making the cut this week, Kenny Perry's in play. I know he's old, but he hits it far for a 55-year-old or however old he is. So you got to like Kenny Perry a little bit this week, just for those purposes, for cut-making purposes. Carlos Ortiz down here, he's been a little bit out of form, so I'll probably skip him this week. And then going down, there's a few other players that need to be mentioned just because of their record at this event. Jonathan Byrd's got multiple top 10s at this event. He hasn't done anything this year. We'll just bring up a scorecard. Yeah, 60 missed cuts, 62nd missed cuts. So there's not much to like from that perspective for Jonathan Byrd, but good record of this event. Again, if you're looking to take a shot, he actually might not be a bad play from that perspective. Only 5,900. And then Ben Curtis, former British Open winner, Ben Curtis. He loves this course. He's made a ton of cuts here. He's like 9 out of 10 in cuts made or something. So actually made the cut at the Byron Nelson last week too. So Ben Curtis, again, you need a player who can make a cut. You want to make a stars and scrubs lineup. Ben Curtis is in play. I sort of advocated at the beginning that this was a good week to go really heavy on stars and use some of those lower price players, because so many players make the cut here. Like over 50% of the players make the cut. So when you're making those lineups, Ben Curtis, Kenny Perry, Jonathan Byrd, those are the type of players you should consider. These are players with good records of this event. They know the course. Experience is a big factor this week. Ben Curtis is a really good short game player too. So, he doesn't hit it far, but he's won a major, and he won it partly because he's really good around the greens. So, Ben Curtis knows how to handle himself on this course. So does Kenny Perry. I like William McGirt. I really like Scott Stallings for his point scoring abilities out this week. And, there's also a few other plays you could even think. Adam Hadwin's been playing pretty solidly. First time at this event. Eric Compton had some good finishes. Really finished up last week poorly, but at 5,600, I'm a little shocked he's that low, to be honest. So someone else you could consider. Again, only, over 50% of the players make the cut this week. So you can take shots this week. Definitely worthwhile doing so. So those are some of those low-owned or sort of low-price players that you can hit up though this week. So yeah, we covered everyone. We covered the top players. We covered the low players. As I mentioned, 120 person field. So only 50 players are going to miss the cut. There's a lot there. This is definitely a week where you can target some of those low price players, because even though they're not attractive, they're not ideal, but they're going to have a better than average shot of making the cut this week, and that's just simple math, right? So if you get a couple of those low owned players through, and then you can stack them with Hideki, Phil, maybe Kevin Na, maybe Bill Haas. You get 3 or 4 players like that in, Brooks Koepka, you're looking at a really high potential lineup, because all you need is one of those low-owned players to kind of come through and land you like a top 20 or a top 15. And if those other 3 or 4 top players that you get in that lineup, perform, you're looking at high scoring lineups. So those are the type of lineups I'm going to be targeting this week. There are some good young players, to target as well that have some high fantasy potential. Tony Finau, Danny Lee. I mentioned Scott Stallings. Look for those fantasy potential guys. Don't forget DraftKings awards high points for birdies and eagles. So the more of those a player makes, the better. They don't discount bogeys and double bogeys as much. So it's a big plus, and that's a lot different from Victive scoring. So keep in mind, if you play on Victive, the DraftKings scoring is different. It awards birdies and eagles more. So, for GPP purposes, keep those players in mind, and don't be afraid to take shots with those lower salary players. Their names may not have good recognition, but they're worthwhile using it just to create those high potential lineups this week. So okay, that's pretty much it for this week. Actually, let's mention one more thing. For the 100 entry, or for the $3 entry, 100K first place. Don't be afraid to sort of hit on a core group of players this week and just go with it. You can't cover everyone. It's kind of an all or nothing tournament. So my strategy this week for the DraftKings $3 100K tournament, I'm going to pick 3 or 4 players from the top and just have them in all my lineups. And if they hit, they hit, and I'll have a really good week, and maybe I'll win. And if they don't, they don't. And my ROI won't be good, but it's only a $3 entry, so it's not that big a deal. I'm just going for the first place. So that's my strategy for the DraftKings 100K to first $3 entry this week. I just wanted to mention that because I think that's the best strategy in these top-heavy tournaments. So don't try and cover all your bases. Pick out a nice group of core players for tournament strategy this week if you're doing a ton of entries, and just go with it. Just let the chips fall where they may. So only 2 weeks out from the U.S. Open. Good luck, guys. Good luck this week. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at the Fantasy Grind if you have questions. The forms on RotoCurve are up. If you want to pop in there and ask a question too, I'm always around. Love answering questions about fantasy golf. Hope you guys have a good week. Hope you enjoyed this show. I will be back next week, and have a good one.